2 abstentions.
So it's carried.
Carried.
That's carried. So now we vote.
Just to receive.
So we now vote to receive. Yeah. So that was moved by Pauline and seconded by Sam. So all those in favour? Aye. Against? Thank you. Carried. Right. I want to have a break at 11, but depending on how this next one might be a bit slower, but the 2 after that I think are going to be real good. So we'll see how we go. Number 9, the Addington Brook Waterway Renewal Masterplan, please. And is it Grant? Is it?
That's right.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Just if you think those other 2 are going to go through pretty easy, do you want to just get them out of the way and done?
Sorry, Yanni, I didn't hear.
I was just suggesting if you think number 10 and number 11 are going to go through relatively straightforward, do you want to just get them out of the way?
I don't know if staff are here. Do you want?
Staff are here, and if you do that and go into tea break, staff are going to have to wait until after that to be able to present their information. So can we keep the agenda as it is, please?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, go Grant.
Cool.
Right, thanks for seeing me. Hopefully this is a bit lighter than your previous discussion. My name is Grant Solo. I'm the team leader for Three Waters Asset Management, but I'm also here representing the land drainage asset management for Three Waters. So the project is Addington Brook. In a nutshell, it's a renewal of a 1.2 kilometre timber lining, which runs from Deans Avenue to Riccarton Avenue. Historically, there was timber lining along the toe of the drain. Unfortunately, that's pretty much now rotted away, and there's only some remnants remaining. Addington Brook is the privilege of being the most polluted waterway in Christchurch, given the historical upstream uses and contamination and the way that we've used waterways as a means of flushing a lot of our problems away. The current form is steeply incised, especially at the ends towards Deans Ave and Riccarton Ave. Suffering from slumping, especially in the recent floods we've had. July, we've had a lot of floods, a lot of slumping, especially around the tennis courts, a lot of sedimentation release and all that kind of stuff. Scouring and pretty much general neglect as well. So I started looking at this project probably about a year and a half ago, but mostly in earnest at the beginning of this year. So I came into it because there is as a precursor to a proposed treatment facility, which is proposed for Addington Brook and Riccarton Main Drain, which is going to be located outside of the park, is to basically take care of the first flush and provide some water quality for both of those waterways. So the reason I started to look at this renewals is that there's no point in cleaning up the water if we then put it into Addington Brook, where we don't take care of it, and we end up with sediment discharges going through. We won't really know if it's actually been useful or not. So I first started writing the brief back in January. One of the first things I did was contact Rupert Bowl, who's the manager of the Higdon Park Oval. We had a pretty good chat about things. One of the first things he mentioned was that parks were about to go through the process of fencing off Addington Brook due to health and safety concerns. There have been a number of fatalities in the waterways in South Higdon Park, so parks were wanting to get on there and do something with it. They have actually already fenced off Riccarton Main Drain, but they hadn't quite got around to Addington Brook. So based on what I discussed with Rupert, he took it to his head department, and we got agreement from parks that rather than fencing it off, we would actually expedite our works and try and get it through as quickly as we could. So the proposal that I said, or that I put through to Rupert, was that even though we wanted to do a naturalisation, what we weren't wanting to do was clear fell a 8 to 10 metre corridor either side of the waterway and just go through and just do a renewal. What we're actually doing is being more sensitive to the plants and the trees and everything that's in there, and we'll try and achieve good, safe banks where we can, but also work around as many existing trees as we can as well. So there's compromises on both sides. I've also engaged quite a bit with Toby Chapman, the city arborist. He's also been involved right from the start of the process. So once we've got agreement that the fence can be delayed, we engaged WSP to prepare a master plan, which is what has been sent out to you guys. So if I can scroll through master plan. Okay, so I'll just quickly run through the guts of the master plan itself. Yep. Okay, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to have a look at it. There's quite a bit of background information in the actual master plan itself. WSP, I feel, have done a pretty stellar job with preparing this, and the feedback I've had on it so far pretty much backs it up. So it's just a bit of a context with where Addington Brook runs, just in the general kind of catchment. It's one of the feeders, tributaries into the Avon, which runs then through North Hagley Park. Just some historical information from old survey plans. What it does show is that most of the alignment of Addington Brook is still current for where it used to be, right from when we first started collecting information, which is quite a feat. A lot of our drains have been modified quite heavily over time. The main, difference, as you can see here, is where it's been realigned to move around the netball courts in that lower right-hand photograph. So that's probably been the main change. So one thing that we were looking to do as we were working through the process was actually do a bit of a stock take on what existing documentation and plans and all that stuff had already been prepared. So some of the key documents that we delved into was there was a plan put out by the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee some years ago, just on the state of Addington Brook. Some general works with MKT and Aitahu. But the key documents that we really needed to align with was the Hagley Park master plan and the management plan. Those we felt were pretty much the key documents we needed to make sure we aligned with. So within the management plan itself, there's a whole lot of key objectives for various projects that were created and put forward for things that could be done within Hagley Park. And it just so happened that Addington Brook slotted in quite nicely with some of them. So the general feel for some of the works that should be looked at within this part of Addington Brook was basically to take away some of the inciseness. Encourage native plantings was another one. So through the corridor, and basically just, showed a bit of love, I suppose. So one of the first steps we took, we engaged an arborist. He does a lot of work for council, who did a stock take of trees and tree health within a 20-metre corridor either side of the waterway. That then gave us the ability to give each tree a bit of a stock take on health, both condition as well as structural health. That then allowed us to give a score to each of the trees that were in there. So this on the slide here, you can see this is some of the work that was done on Addington Brook within North Hagley Park. So it's basically on the other side of Riccarton Ave, as it discharges, basically from the road through to the Avon. So this is a similar thing that's already in existence, which gave a bit of a palette for what we could try and achieve within South Hagley Park. There's a bit of feedback on some of the form there about the amount of rock and all that kind of stuff, but generally that's the kind of the work that's been done to Addington Brook already, just to give a bit of a feel for it. This just shows what it looks like when it's running quite full. You can see in some of the photographs there where the trees that we've got trees that not only are on the side of the waterway, we've actually got them grown within there as well, ones that have self-seeded. So this just shows some of the before and after photos. We've had a number of surveys done through here, and this just shows some of the slumping that's occurring. So these photos were taken before and after the July events, which just shows some of the damage that's just ongoing. The one against the netball courts is probably quite telling. So as I said before, one of the areas that's been realigned from the natural course is actually by the tennis courts, and as you can see, there is quite a bit of wear and tear occurring in this area, which is adding to the sediment loadings of the waterway. So for the master plan itself, along with the site survey, tree survey, we also had some contamination land looked at, contamination surveys done. Soil samples were taken from the banks as well as the beds of the stream. Going forward, we'd look at also doing some geotech as well as flows, loads, all that kind of stuff. So this is the kind of general work that WSP have come up with as far as solutions for what we're trying to achieve. So there's some lovely little graphics there which show what we're trying to do as far as flatten out some of the banks. There might be some better ones. As you can see through there, so this basically just demonstrates that what we're looking to do is work around existing trees that are within the corridor. Ideally, would go for grades of 1 and 4 on each of the side slopes, which would make it a safer entry and exit if someone did manage to fall into the waterway itself, versus what we've got now, which in some cases is almost 1 on 1. Would be looking to incorporate various in-stream features on the way through. So we've used Greg Burrell from In-Stream Consulting to provide advice on freshwater ecology on the way through. So not only are we looking at doing work on outside of the banks and planting, all that kind of good stuff, we're also looking to incorporate logs, root masses, ponds, riffles, all that kind of stuff on the way through, just to give differences in both velocity and character of the waterway to basically make it a bit more inviting. There isn't a lot of existing freshwater ecology in the waterway. Some of the surveys, some of the career surveys that have been done through there, they have found some fish, but they're pretty sparse and usually just the harder species. Greg has made the comment that if we do carry out this works, he's quite confident that we will start to attract a more diverse range of freshwater ecology up into the watercourse through here. So on the slide here, we've actually got 2 options that we're proposing. The first one is to keep it along its current alignment, but the second option is to actually realign the waterway, as you can see in this slide here, more to the west and take it a bit further away from the netball courts. It's a bit of a subtle difference, but it will improve, or it'll decrease the chance of scouring on some of those type bends during flood events, and it'll also give us what the ecologists are calling a bit of an oxbow, with just leaving the original alignment there. We're looking to try and incorporate some kind of a wetland type environment through there, just to give it a bit more of diversity. So when we went through and did the tree survey, just scroll through these pretty quick. There's just the 2 options. Right, so this is the outcome of the tree survey itself, based on the 2 alignments. Carrying out the work we need to try and do, just to get all those benefits. The effect is we will need to remove, if we go for option 2, which is the preferred option, 45 existing trees along that 1.2 kilometre alignment, and we're looking to transplant 20 as well. Taking into consideration the tree policy of the 2-to-1 replant for removal, we are actually anticipating on doing far more than the tree policy. Given the corridor width, we're looking to try and plant up between 5 and 8 metres on either side of the waterway, so it's going to be a substantial area that we're planting up in native plants, again, which accords with the Higley Park master plan and management plan. So that's probably the guts of the, there we go. So again, lots of lovely pictures for you to peruse at your leisure, which basically just goes to show, again, it's the flattening of the banks, planting up native areas to get that regeneration going on. As far as comms and engagement goes, we've carried out key stakeholder engagement, various stages through the preparation of the master plan. I think we started at about the 50% preparation mark. We met with the Christchurch West Mountain Zone Committee members. They were fully supportive of the works we're trying to achieve. We only met with some representatives, but they took some slides back with them and then presented it to the full board And again, everyone supported what we're doing. We've liaised with MKT, who took again the details and some of the slides back to the Renewal at Tuahiwi. The only comments I got back from them was that they wanted to have some input into some storyboards that we're looking to put in along the waterway. We presented the master plan to the Hagley Park reference group, which includes the key interest groups such as the Hands Off Hagley, and again they were also fully supportive of what we're trying to do here. Early engagement's been carried out with the Newsline article that was released on the 17th of November, and depending on the outcome of this meeting, we'll look to do some follow-up release probably tomorrow. I think it's been put forward to.
Okay.
As far as construction of the works goes, we've got a budget of 6.3 million. That budget was the best kind of allowance we had at the time that the project was initiated. There is a large amount of budget in there for contaminated lands. I am hoping that based on the contaminated land survey, we may not need it all. And there's also a fair whack in there for tree removal as well. We are looking to divide the construction activities up into at least two separable portions to try and ease the pain, potentially, I suppose is one way to put it. We're looking to do the first portion between the netball courts and the Hagley Oval, so that's basically through the area where there is no, the woodland feel isn't through there, it's a lot more open. So basically that will allow us to almost give a bit of a taste for what the rest of it's going to look like before we actually go through and do tree removals. So currently we're looking to do some construction works for the first separable portion in kind of March, April. We'll assume that that's going to be successful, and following that we'll then move into the rest of the works, tree removals, and then doing either side of that. We are very conscious, and again discussing it with key staff such as Toby Chapman, we're well aware that there will need to be quite a heavy focus on protecting the trees when the construction activities have been carried out. So we're looking to ensure that methodology, track record, and relevant experience are heavily weighted within the construction works. So I do understand that there's a bit of financial pressure coming on at the moment, and that every cent is being looked at quite closely. I just would like to say that I believe that this project, it's going to lift the profile of what really is a fairly manky, neglected waterway within what's supposed to be one of the jewel park of Christchurch. We'll be continuing some of the themes that are already in existence in North Hagley Park down through South Hagley Park. The benefits, we're going to be improving freshwater habitat, freshwater ecology. We'll be bringing in more diverse native ranges of trees through there for hopeful improvement to native bird life. This project, it actually hits, for a renewals project, which is where I tend to work, this one actually hits all 6 values that council tries to put out there. Normally, if I get one or two, then it's...
I think you've said more than enough.
Okay.
Thank you. It is
So
not your
I think it's a
job
pretty
to
really good
extol
idea.
the project. It's just to give objective.
Are you a
advice.
salesman? Right, we'll do some questions. I'm sure we've got something about Pauline and then Mel.
Thanks, Grant. You mentioned there's a couple of things this is dependent on. You can't install the first flush basin until this work's done because it's virtually pointless. And that's intended to go on the other side of the road, on the other side of Dean's Ave, is that correct?
That's right.
And what's the cost of that? Do you have an idea?
I'm not sure, I'm not involved in that project.
Okay, and is that just a basin?
No, they're proposing more of a like a bioscape treatment device, so it's like a big rain garden. So it'll be a pit of some sort with filter media, drainage media in the bottom.
Is it going to be a bit like the Bells Creek one? Or
No, do you mean the storm filter?
yeah,
No.
not as big as that.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty big from what I've seen, but it's going to be planted up. So from the top surface, it'll look like a rain garden with mulch and plants and stuff growing through it.
And you don't know when that's timed for?
No, it's been a bit slower in occurring,
Yeah.
but I think within the next couple of years is what they're looking for.
Okay, and then the other question is, how long? You talked about the fencing being required on the stream because it's no longer safe.
Yep.
So, but you can hold off that fencing until this work's done and hold off the cost of that,
That was what we were putting forward, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
So the idea was that rather than spend a couple $100,000 on fencing, we accelerate these works and that takes the place of the fencing itself.
yeah. So, yeah, to do this work is not actually going to resolve a lot of the contamination in the brook, is it? Because it's
No, it
coming
won't.
from all those businesses in Riccarton
That's correct.
that are running off. But it will naturalise it, make it safer, make it better amenity and all those ecological values. Will it actually bring back the ecology if it's still polluted?
There'll be less likelihood, I'm assuming. We do need to get the water quality tidied up, and that is, again, it's a project that's been put forward. So this on its own, no, I don't think it will.
And so the other thing is that, are we bringing this forward in the LTP now?
Yeah, I think the main spend is probably 2 years away, 1 year away. So yeah, some of the difficulty that we have with renewals projects is that we can't always spend the money when we need to for budgetary constraints for when we try and set these projects up.
Yeah.
So for me personally, a lot of my projects do drip feed for the first couple of years in anticipation that we bring funds back and actually build it in a sensible time frame.
And so how long will it take to do it? I mean, you talked about starting in March with the first phase, second phase after that. Would it be 1 year's work or?
Yes, so I want to get the first lot done this kind of construction season, and the next lot would follow on. We're basically just following straight on with detailed design, and then we'll just crack into it. So it'll be detailed design, will cover the whole waterway. Discussing it with procurement, we're even considering whether we look at ensuring that there's enough detail within the first separable portion so that we can get unit rates, and if possible, we may even just roll it out as a variation.
And so how much have we spent already?
Probably about $100,000.
Okay. So this is on top of that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
There's a pathway along the side of this. Is that part of the proposed budget?
It was put in there for graphical purposes of what could be achieved. So the pathways themselves are something that would need to be discussed with Parks colleagues. If they were able to have suitable funding, perhaps we look at it together.
So the answer is no, it's not part of the cost.
It could be, and there would be enough money on there. It's only a gridded path, so it's not a big deal.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so my next question about that path was, why is it along the south side of the Brook rather than along the north, because that requires putting that bridge in? Can you answer that?
Yeah, a lot of the paths that are shown there, they mimic existing sight lines where people are currently walking. So as you're saying on that southern side, we think it's probably people that park on Deans Ave and then walk to the netball courts along that side of the stream. So they do mimic just where people are currently informally walking anyway.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is there, because I'm supportive of this because there's lots of great features to this, but is there a way to, if that budget can include the pathway and it's not necessarily required now, it could be done later, or could it be done in a way that doesn't require putting in a pedestrian bridge? How can we make it cheaper?
Make the entire project cheaper, you mean?
Well, if this pathway can be done within that budget some way,
Yep.
then that means that budget can be trimmed, doesn't it?
It could, yep. But again, it depends if Parks, because that would then be handed over to them as an asset, so they would need to make sure that they're on board. There's other considerations which this doesn't show, such as safety, lighting, all that kind of stuff, so it is a lot more complicated.
Right, and then the other question I had is, and I couldn't see it, but I might have missed it. What was the cost of option one?
We haven't put together any specific values on either of the options.
Well, there is a budget value in 7.1. So I feel like I haven't got enough information at the moment. Well, to just make any decision whatsoever, because we haven't got all the pricing.
This is only a master plan. It could easily come back once we do have it.
So are we making a decision on the budget today then?
The budget's already gone through the LTP process. It's already a figure that's been approved, I suppose.
Right.
It's a line item that's currently in the LTP.
Right, and that's to cover option 2.
That'll cover off other options.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about finances. What would you anticipate to be the financial implications if we held off on this? And I'm anticipating it would be a bit more expensive in the future, but do you have any idea on in that regard?
The difficulty may be if we hold off the risk to not doing something and having those steep banks may not be enough for, or maybe too much for parks, and they may want to fence it off, in which case you're going to lose a couple $100,000 just in fencing it, in which case then we have to make a decision. Well, if we do then go through and do these works, do we do the fencing there? Are they going to be a detraction, or do we just rip it out and throw it away?
And in terms of the safety issues, you highlighted the fatalities in your brief. I'm just wanting to check around where are the highest areas of danger, particularly for the public, in this brook, and is it involved in, I guess, in option 2? Is that has that been highlighted in option 2 in regards to could we prioritise that part first in terms of the more dangerous parts over the other sites?
I'm not 100% sure on where the fatalities occurred, but if someone else knows, please chime in. But I believe there's been one on Addington
I can
Brook.
answer that.
Oh, thank you.
There were 2 fatalities within Hagley Park and South Hagley Park, one in the Riccarton Stream and one in Addington Brook. The Addington Brook one was between the netball courts and Glenham Road, where it's quite heavily treed. Unfortunately, a person who was part of a homeless community over in the old showgrounds area biked off. It's quite late at night, very dark. Biked off to the left, and if you know that area, or the brook, it's almost a vertical drop. Yeah. So there are coronial inquiries going on. They're taking a very long time. We haven't had the results of those yet. We haven't been instructed or directed to fence the streams as such, but with the advent of night cricket at Hagley Oval, when the lights were commissioned, we took it upon ourselves to try to prevent patrons who might have had a little bit too much to drink or whatever to step in and put some sort of farm style, woodland style fencing in place. So we've completed Riccarton Stream, because that's predominantly where the people come in and out to the venue, and then, as Grant has already mentioned, we were going to progress on to Addington Brook and focus on that area. Everywhere else it's either reasonably well protected closer to Riccarton Ave, or it's wide open, so visibility is a bit better.
Last question. In regards to, we've covered, I guess, the economic side and the social side. In terms of the environmental aspect, I see a lot of benefits. In regards to council's responsibilities in regards to climate action and ecology, you said that ticks all of the boxes, correct?
Yep.
Great. So when we're thinking about the water quality, you did say that it wouldn't improve if we move the water.
That's right.
And why couldn't it improve if we did that?
The main sources of contamination are upstream of the site.
Okay.
So while council's made a lot of inroads into making a lot of awareness for the industry, so council's spent a lot of time on that to try and actually focus on the source control. There will still be people that are polluting, and there's still a lot of historical sediments, contamination that'll still be coming through. There'll still be things coming off, like your normal urban runoff with your metals that are involved with that. If you then look at a catchment which is industrial, you've then got big trucks, big brakes, bigger tyres, so the amount of contaminants coming off is increased. So that that needs to be dealt with. The stuff in the Addington Brook, but by that stage, that's just where you can see it. If that makes sense.
So apologies. Would there be potential for further plant life to actually try and mitigate or even just slowly create a healthy waterway, even adding to that?
Yeah, I mean, once the bulk of it's taken out, once you get rid of that first flush, which is what the treatment device will take out, then this things we're putting in now will assist in that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much for that presentation. I'm just curious about kind of why now, why this wasn't done years ago. Just looking through the history. Is it a perfect moment in time to do it, or what's the rationale behind now?
Yeah, well, I guess it has been sparked mostly ahead of the treatment device. If you're going to do something, you might as well make sure you focus on both parts. But you're right. I mean, possibly in the good old days, parks and waterways were one team. So when the master plan, the management plan put together, there may have been a bit more synergy going on, but then with division of teams, some of that knowledge may have been lost. We've got a lot of waterways within the city that need a lot of work. Priorities. This one, it's not like it's got any structures that are falling or failing that are going to cause a lot of flooding within residential areas, so therefore it would be pushed down the priority list. But as I said, timing, this is probably just the perfect timing ahead of the treatment plant, sorry.
Okay. And yeah, just talking about improving water quality, I may have missed this, but is there any reason why we wouldn't try and treat the water before it, from when it leaves the industrial area to where it sort of enters the stream, if there was some sort of,
Yeah, so again, there are a lot of council staff that are working with industry to try and install source control. That'll cover off, your kind of roofs and hard stand areas. You're still going to get quite a bit of, wind blowing stuff, tyres, brakes, just the usual kind of sources of contamination on the actual roads. That'll still then wash off into sumps, which then goes into the pipe network and into the waterway.
Okay. Right, thank you.
So I might just put my oar in here, that what you're going to build upstream of the sale yards, so to speak, in there, that's where you'll put what I would call a first flush basin. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, yes.
And so if that was done, it would satisfy all our clean water things that we've got to do to a fairly good extent, I'd imagine. Yeah, I know they want to do this first, but what I'm just following along from what Kelly's doing. If we do all this, spend all this money here, we're not going to change the contaminated water at all, unless if we did fix the contamination first, because that's our main thrust, to stop contaminated water getting into the river. But I know that's coming. Someone will be designing it somewhere along the line.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's already through, I think, prelim design.
It's similar, Kelly, to what's happening down at that Waitaki Basin. The main stormwater outfall for all of Aranui comes down a pipe and will go into that, and it fixes all the stuff off roads and oil leaks and all sorts of things.
So, Mayor, is the question, when is the first flush basin works actually going to be undertaken?
Can I just say, I already asked that, and the thing is that Grant told me that there's no point doing the first flush until the Addington Brook is clean of sediment, and you're implying that we should do the first flush first so that clean water is coming in when we do the Addington Brook. So just need clarification on the order.
No, I'm just doing it for clarity for Kelly to say that the water that comes off the roof of all the factories is all coming down the pipe and off the roads and sort of things like that. We're looking after factories and working with industrial people as best we can. We've still got the stuff off roads, which is going to happen regardless. The council are working on the first flush basin, which will happen, but in my view, I think that needs to happen before we do this. I think this is a fantastic...
You're not in debate, Mayor. Yeah.
All right, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so until you've done the first flush device, it's not going to remove the contamination from the water. But if you don't do this, you're still going to end up with sediment mobilisation every time it rains. It's still going to keep wearing away at the banks. It's going to keep eroding around all the trees. I don't think it's going to be too long till it starts to eat away the netball courts. The last rain event, there was quite a major slump through there. As soon as you start to get a few slumps, the bank's steeping up, it gets saturated, it's just going to keep going. So you could continue it. Again, there's a risk appetite for whether it's going to be fenced off. So you just have to weigh those up, whether you want to delay it or not.
So, okay, thank you. I've got Timothy.
Thank you. I walk this every week and sometimes twice a week with the dog, and I far prefer going on the south side, and there's good bridges, etc. So, and there's tracks rather. We've got great paths around the Hagley Park, which are fantastic for all, but some of us just prefer to kind of go the tracks rather than that. The first flush doesn't really take out all contaminants in the sense that it's more about sediment, isn't it?
No, it'll take out. I mean, you get a lot of contaminants binding to sediment.
Okay.
Yep. So if you take the first flush out, then
Okay.
theoretically that takes care of most of it.
If we could get a time frame for that works, that'd be good as well. Thanks.
Yep.
I'm just concerned because when I park at the Rickon roundabout and I walk through the rougher area there and I climb over the fence, which you're not meant to, and I go across a bridge which you can't get to anymore because of the fences, because I like doing that, and that's fine. My concern is, if this work's done here, is there still a fence going to be put in there? 'Cause I just kind of think because if we're talking fatalities, we've had them in the Avon, we've had them in the Heathcote, we've had them in the Rickon stream and the Brook. So what's the policy with regards to fencing off our waterways? Because if you look at the Addington Brook, when it goes to the north side of Rickon Ave, it's a beautiful area with a path down right by the water, and it's very secluded, and it's lovely by the Rose Garden. We have the summer theatre there, so you could almost argue the same thing with the Rickon stream, because you've got a lot of people there the lights are there and they've always really been there, but at the cricket. But when we have summer theatres, etc., by the Rose Garden, you could argue the same thing. Obviously, they wouldn't be intoxicated; they really just have ice creams instead. But I'm just wondering what the policy is there, and what is.
As far as policy goes, I don't believe council has a policy. That's a bit of a can of worms. If you want to try and fence off all your waterways, you've got a number of waterways through the city. I don't believe we go there. I don't think there's a requirement.
So what's the risk? What would be if this work goes ahead, is it going to be fenced off or not?
No.
Okay.
So,
That's the intention.
so we take a risk-based approach to fencing of waterways. So, for example, some people may be aware of where we've got steep-sided drains and we've got school children crossing bridges. We've fenced a short section adjacent to those bridges.
Yep.
So, no, we don't have a black and white. We're going to fence all our streams, which would be absurd in Christchurch. But we do take a risk-based approach, and that's the driver here. Is it's steep-sided, and if someone falls down and they're not in good shape, they won't be able to get out. But the grading that's been described removes the need for a fence and reduces the risk considerably.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Sarah?
Thank you. Most of my questions have been asked, which is great. Just a quick one on the trees themselves that are being removed. So I know when we did the Lincoln Road bus lanes, that we were talking about removing trees, and I know that some of the ones in here are quite significant size or sort of mature size, but some of the trees that were counted officially as trees by the arborist were what most people would call shrubs. But because they had a potential to grow high eventually, they had to be counted as trees. And I'm just wondering how many kind of fall into that actually not particularly nice scrubby things. You know, it's that, you know what I mean?
Depends who you ask. If you ask a tui, they might think it's quite nice. There's no genuine definition of what is a tree and what is not a tree. But I mean, in terms of practical management, we class a tree as something that has to be climbed, that you cannot maintain or manage from the ground.
Yeah.
And it typically comes in around 6 to 7 meters tall.
Yeah. See,
whether it's at maturity or not.
Okay. Yeah. So it's the potential for it to get that high.
Yeah.
As a species rather than Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
The sedimentation, and we've been talking around the table about there being pollution and sedimentation, but actually when it comes to waterways, sedimentation is a type of pollution. So it's actually one of the components, and it's the main component along Addington Brook. So while the industrial stuff and the road runoff and the vulcanised rubber and the copper brake pads and those kind of things come from that area, you need both pieces of work to actually improve the water enough to go into the river. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you for that presentation. My question is about deliverability and whether you've got capacity to deliver this project at the moment in your current program. And perhaps a secondary question to that is, are you pushing something else back so that you can push this one forward?
This is quite specialist work. So there is always, this would probably sit perhaps outside the HDM panel. Being working around the trees, it is very specialised type stuff. We're not going to probably know the market until we actually go out and have a bit of a feel around and see what's out there. And no, we're not pushing anything else out.
Perhaps the final question then is, I appreciate that you don't have any exact costings, but how confident are you that this project can be done within the current budget line provision that we've got? Or are we going to see you back here looking for more money for it?
The difficulty we have is when these projects are scoped, we haven't done an investigation. So you may see me back, if I'm being honest.
You also said there might be savings.
That's the difficulty. So as I said, I've allowed for 980 grand for contaminated land removal. I'm hoping that will be vastly reduced, but then we are probably going to put in more trees, which then may push the cost up. Once I've gone out to market for the first separable portion, I'll have better confidence in what it's going to be.
And I've got Yanni next. Sorry.
Thank you. And look, I mean, thank you for the work that you've done on it. Like, it is a really amazing presentation and Masterplan. I'm just trying to sort of understand a few things around the cost. So my understanding of the budget, it's currently in the 25 year where the majority of the money is going to be spent. So I'm just trying to understand the process around, like, is this going to be an annual plan change around timing? Because we've just had the sheet and there's nothing shown changed in the annual plan. So I'm trying to understand how the budget's working on this.
I think there was something mentioned recently about annual plan change.
Okay. I mean, I'm only looking at the spreadsheet that got
Understood,
sent around
just have to bring it forward.
sent around yesterday. That doesn't have this project coming back.
Ideally, it would be covered by a bring back.
Right.
Okay, you're good.
So, okay. So does that mean we need to substitute other things so that we can afford to do it?
So that's not for the officer
Right.
at this stage.
Okay. Well,
Okay, so I've
So I'll just to clarify, we're proposing to bring back this and begin it this year. So begin construction this financial year. So March, April 2023.
right. So I guess when I'm kind of at a higher level, what I'm concerned about is at a time when we've been told we've got the most significant budget pressure that we've ever faced in recent history, with for all sorts of reasons, that we're bringing forward a project into the time that we can possibly at least afford to do it.
So this is within the budget this year, and related to the question that Councillor Henstock answered, are we pushing anything out? We have already pushed some things out because of consenting difficulties with Environment Canterbury within the stormwater program. So there's plenty of room within the broader stormwater program this year to do this work. And if we didn't do this work, then we'd have to fence it. So it's the choice for councillors to make.
And not just trying to understand the reason why we need to fence it. Like, we haven't heard from the coroner's inquiry. So wouldn't it be better to wait until we get the coroner's recommendation?
Again, that's a risk-based approach that we take to the to fencing our waterways. So it's an assessment of the risk.
Okay. And do we just the hazardous material? Sorry, you may have mentioned it, but in other projects that we've done around land drainage, we've left the hazardous material in situ. So what's the hazardous material that we're removing, and why doesn't it need to be removed?
Again, it's just got your normal metal contamination. If parks were happy for us to leave contaminated material within Hagley Park, that would be fine. We haven't had those discussions with them yet.
Is it
Right, now,
sorry? Is it material that's in the waterway, or is it?
yes,
It'd be both the sediment as well as where we're cutting their banks. So where we're going from 1 to 1 to 1 and 4, we'll be removing some of that. That's where we've found pockets of stuff. Not so much actually within the waterway itself, which was quite surprising.
Yeah.
So yes, there will be some contaminated material there.
And just the only other thing I wanted to ask is in terms of the staging, could we do obviously the stage where the fence is going is the netball to Hagley Oval. That's the one where we don't have fences at the moment.
We don't have fences around any of Addington Brook yet.
Right. But that's so could we do we could do it in 2 stages?
Yeah, so the intention was to do the netball to the oval, just because there's no tree removal required.
Right.
Maybe more palatable to the community if they're not seeing us just rushing there with chainsaws first thing.
So I guess
That's
that was
what your presentation said, that you would
right.
do it in 2 stages.
Thank you.
Yeah, but just the other point was just around the public consultation. I see that this is medium significance, and I really appreciate that you've sought views from some of the interested parties. But I'm just trying to understand: is when this goes to detailed design, is this going to go out for public consultation where people can raise their views?
Yeah, sorry, I should have
I
covered
answer that?
Oh,
Yeah. This is entirely consistent with the master plan and the Hagley Park management plan, so there is no need to specifically go out about improving the waterways. It's what we've already told people we are going to do.
When did we consult on those?
Well, the management plan and the master plan were adopted by council in 2007, so you could argue we're 15 years overdue.
we're getting there though.
Okay, so thank you, Yanni. I've got a question. Why? I know you want to get some stuff done in this financial year, but why would you start playing in the middle of a park on a drain, Brook, when it's probably going to be the wettest time of the year? Would we not be better if we were going to do it to be starting in October or something? Just putting my ex-old contractor's hat on when life would be a lot easier than when it's hosing down. And I'm happy to move it, by the way. And Sam's happy to second it.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
With the addition.
It is starting to move into winter. However, we won't have to deal so much with groundwater. I mean, it's just going to be storm flows we need to manage, and rain events happen all through the year. It's not like we've got a lot of groundwater we've got to manage.
No, it dries a chip. And just before I let Pauline talk, I've got to point out that I've put in that item number 5 that people need to just be aware of if I'm moving it in Sam second. Is that okay? Pauline, you had a question?
My question is there any other funding that would help us with this, like the government freshwater funding or anything that we could get some assistance with, because it's an incredibly worthy project for water quality and environmental enhancement, and as you say, all the 6 values. Is there anywhere that we could get some partner funding?
We haven't looked for it at this stage.
Oh, really?
Yep,
Can we look for it?
we can.
No, I think that we've done that one.
Sorry.
But there must be other funds out there at the moment. Okay, and what does it mean for this project if number 5, if we have to put this through the annual plan? Obviously it means you won't be able to start in March.
That's correct.
So if it's been pushed out, then yeah,
And so what's the implication of that?
we're back to
Fencing.
the risk mitigation. And if we
So
have to
that would
fence it,
be-
we'll fence it.
That would trigger fencing.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
So you've just put that in rather than as an amendment. Okay.
I'm just letting people know that I put it in there so that... Sarah.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my question too. So Phil, it just with putting that in, your intention is to defer any work on the project until we've made other decisions. Is that right?
What I've put it in there, and it's sort of starting to get into a bit of I won't say debate. The only reason I put it in there, that this is a great project, a great report, well presented. There's no doubt it has to be done in my mind. It's no problem. But coming into what's going to happen in our briefing this afternoon on the start of the annual plan process, I'm just looking at we've got to really cut our cloth to what we do, and everything that comes past our eyes, we should say, "Oh, is this absolutely necessary?" Because we're heading into a bit of strife coming up, I think. So that's the only reason I put it in there. Not to flag it altogether, just to put it to one side and look at it through the annual plan process.
So, because there's two different things. So we would normally look at all of the projects as part of the annual plan anyway. I wouldn't want to be putting off the early work on this. That's next March and April and things. We would look at the timing of the other budget during the annual plan anyway, but this defers the early work. So I'm just asking if you can put number 5 separately. I'm still happy to look at it during the annual plan, but I think that as a resolution, I'm not happy to vote for that. So if you could just put number 5 separately, because it's an effective deferral of the project, which I don't want to do.
So you'll do it, yeah, okay. So the early works, you're talking about detailed planning, detailed design.
Yes, it means they can't, if they have to wait until anything's confirmed next June, then staff won't be able to do any more work on this, and I'm not happy with that. So I'm just asking that you put number 5 separately so they can get on with the project.
I think you should do that. Yeah.
Okay. Right, now we go again. Sarah, Tim, and then...
So with the fencing...
No, it's not debate.
What would be the cost of fencing? And if it were fencing, as in if it was delayed and number 5 went through and it was delayed and we decided we had to fence, I'm presuming then it would be removed once the work started. So it's kind of like a pointless process. But has there been an estimate on the cost of the fencing that would be removed once it's done?
Not by me.
So the fencing around Riccarton Stream was in the order of about 50 to 60k.
Yeah. Very nice fence, by the way.
Yeah, well, we have to do everything in a woodland context, but it's Addington Brook's a lot larger.
Oh, yeah.
You're probably talking about 200k.
Cool. Thank you.
And of course, I bring you back to the management plan, and the master plan requires us to do this work, so we'd then be pulling the fence out.
So thank you.
Aaron and Yanni.
So, but if the idea of the fence is to show there's a danger to stop people falling in, wouldn't you, and say the works were going to start next spring, summer to do the brook, wouldn't you just bang around Waratahs and emergency tape like you would for a normal when there's a hazard?
Put some cones.
Like versus a $200,000 fence, you'd do it like a $2,000 fence?
Look, it all depends on the decision that's made. And to be really frank about it, I mean, if a decision is made to progress the works within a reasonable time frame, we're not putting a fence up. Right? There hasn't been a fence there ever. So we just have to manage the risk that we've had for a long time.
Potentially, if there's a bit you're really worried about, you put up emergency tape and say caution here.
Yeah, and we can, it's an operational job for staff. And as I said earlier, the reason that we took this step was because of the change in the activity within Hagley Park, in particular, the nighttime activity. And people are drinking and, large crowds, and people do silly things. So that was the only reason that we responded the way we did.
I don't understand how we can start this project with $78,000 on budget for this current financial year. So, I mean, we don't even have the money to start in March, April. So I'm not sure, just because of the new resolution that's been put, which seems to make logical sense, I'm missing something in terms of how this project can start with $78,000. We don't have money on this financial year to do this project.
Can you answer the question, please, Alan?
That's what we need to do.
So what we would do a bring back through the PMO.
But nothing in our we've just received all the papers yesterday on the draft annual plan. There's not even a bring back in the draft annual plan that we're considering in our workshop
We haven't put anything in the draft annual plan or in this year's yet. We've brought this paper to council. So we need a decision from this council on what you would like to do, and then we will put in place the change requests. And it is all within the stormwater program, as we've explained. So some projects have been deferred, and this one we would like to bring forward. And that's what the paper is before you today.
I don't understand why we wouldn't be asked to make the financial contribution today, so that it's clear when we adopt this what that means.
I wonder if I could make a suggestion to elected members, because I feel like we might be going round in circles. We do have another council meeting on the
December
7th of
7th.
December. I suggest you might want to leave this paper on the table, have your discussion this afternoon, and that will at least then inform you in relation to what you might do, and you can then make a considered view on the 7th. Entirely up to you, members.
I reckon just put it.
I think that's a good idea.
Request through the chair that you include in the resolution that staff explore other avenues for partner funding as well.
Okay,
You happy with that? Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Can I just check also who approves the bring back request?
Sorry, Yanni?
Who approves the bring back request? Like, it's not a change request over 5 million would normally come to us. This isn't a change request, this is a bring back request, so who approves it?
It comes up through the PMO.
It's
I
probably
think it
us
just
is
goes
what we're
to
doing now.
executive leadership team.
So, because it's over 5 million, it would come to council.
Like, just picking up on the point that the chief executive made, if that's the case, then wouldn't it be better to bring it together so that we can make that decision?
I think going from what the chief executive said, let's let it sit on the table until after we've got the first lot of the annual plan briefings and stuff that are heading down our way this afternoon. It'll give us a lot more clarity on where we are heading, I'm sure, and then we can bring it back to the next council meeting.
Yeah, and it won't then delay the project if you decide to proceed.
What we could also do, which might be helpful, is get an estimate for what that first stage would cost,
That would be good.
and so that you can understand what the first stage is and then what the second stage is, because the first stage would be in this financial year and the second stage the following financial year.
And the first stage sounds like it would be considerably lesser.
Yes, it would.
There's no tree removal. And
That's correct.
And it would be good because that would give us an idea of how it's all going to look as well, and for the public.
So I'd just like Sam to because of our standing orders, she just needs to read the item.
So the item's moved and seconded, so we just need a procedural motion for the item to lie on the table and not be further discussed at this meeting.
Can I move a procedural that the matter be put without further debate? If so, I do.
Is that what you want to?
Yeah, that is what I want to do. Yeah.
That's a move and second. So you just need a seconder for that?
Would someone second that? Yeah,
There you are.
Tyler.
Second.
So where does that leave us now?
So what then?
Put it to the debate. Yeah. Oh, sorry, vote on that.
Voting on the procedural.
Vote on the procedural motion.
We are now voting on Jake and Tyler's procedural motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
Oh, I think you're going to need to. I can't tell from that. Just raise of hands, please.
Those against?
Those four. Do the four.
Can someone just please read the actual resolution and make it really clear
what we're getting here.
voting?
Sam?
So moved by Councillor McLennan and seconded by Councillor Harrison Hunt that the motion under debate should now be put.
We've still got number 5 in there that we wanted to put separately. Is that
separate?
Yeah, we'll put that
Sorry,
separate.
can it just be clear? The procedural motion that we're voting on is to have no debate.
No, it's to go to debate now.
Yeah.
Shall we have a cup of tea and come back and think about it?
Yeah.
Yes, you might want to suggest that.
How's about we're 3/4 of an hour after when we were going to stop and have a break, and we're all probably wanting to do something. How's about we have 10 minutes chit chat about it, and then we'll come back and make a decision. How's that? Okay, so we'll come back.
10 minutes.
Yeah, adjourn. And we'll come back at 10:02.